friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 436. Day in the neighborhood. My brothers and sisters. So right before I started to record this video, y'all, I was checking out our channel, right? You know what I'm saying? Looking at the analytics and all that. And then I checked out the most recent comments that we have had on our videos. And 13 hours ago, y'all, the man that we're about to check out today, he left a comment on the last video that we checked out from him Friday. And that man is Adrian from Coffeehouse Crime. The Coffee Man, y'all, has commented on one of our reaction videos from him. And I got it up right now just so y'all can see exactly what he said. And it's like, it was just like a stamp of approval for me, man, because he letting me know that he liked that I be reacting to his videos, you know what I'm saying? And it's also a stamp of approval that he liked that I call him the Coffee Man. So Adrian, from now to the end of time, my brother, you will forever be known as the Coffee Man. But I digress. Hope y'all doing excelente out there today, and I'm glad that you came on back to the channel once again. So fuck with the bean. And the title of the video is Serial Killers and Parasitic Murderers, Exploring Melbourne's Darkest Mysteries. The thing that just stick out to me the most, y'all, with this title is Parasitic Murderers. That is just crazy, man. That is just crazy, y'all. This is basically an hour long, so we know we in for a long ride with this one. But before we take that long ride, my brothers and sisters, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. Another The Coffee Man Friday. Y'all got what y'all need? Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Melbourne, the Australian city well known for its vibrant culture, 4 seasons in a day, and of course, its coffee. With a range of accolades including the world's most livable city 7 years in a row, and the world's 3rd most livable city in 2023, statistics will tell you there is a lot to love about this place.
And I'm not here to disagree, because personally, I love this city for all of the right reasons. But what if I told you that, no matter where you are, monsters live among us? Today, we're trying something new and slightly different for Coffeehouse Crime, by exploring several cases which occurred all across Melbourne. This is the beginning of a new series, one that covers the darkest corners of our most beloved cities. Join me today as I explore the morbid underbelly of Melbourne, Australia. Before I begin, and just let you know that I cover true crime and darkly fascinating stories. So if that does sound like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. And now, with that said, let's grab our shoes, grab a coffee to go, and explore Melbourne's dark side.
Get whatever you may need. And yes, man, please, y'all, if y'all watching my channel, please make sure you go over there and subscribe to the Coffee Man, man. I just can't get over it, y'all. This man got 1.9 million subscribers, and he came over here to our little channel with 2,000 subscribers and just gave us a stamp of approval. And hey, we've been supporting him, and it just feels so good to know that now he is supporting us. So go support him by subscribing and hitting that like button. Let's go.
Welcome to Melbourne, folks. So, with a personal connection so strong, how would I describe this city? If I had to sum it up in just one word, I would say blended. And that's because almost every aspect of this city is chaotically combined with charm. Modern skyscrapers are blended behind old Victorian buildings. Hot and sunny afternoons are blended with sporadic showers. And almost every type of food you can think of can easily be found within walking distance. And so, when I say that this city is for everyone, I sincerely mean it.
Melbourne will charm you with its many laneways, beautiful suburbs, and cozy architecture. And of course, it's well known for its great food and its great coffee. I'm here at Light Up Coffee in South Melbourne, and I have to say, this suburb really does have it good. With more brunch spots than days in the year, I don't think I could ever eat my way through all of them. Now, I'm often asked what my favourite coffee is, and I have to say it's the flat white. Interesting fact, but did you know that Australia invented the flat white? Apparently, back in the 1980s, some random guy wanted something between a latte and an espresso. Fast forward 40 years, and it's now one of the most popular coffees to date.
Wow.
Enough about coffee today though. Our story today takes us 10 miles north of here to a suburb named Brunswick. And it's about a woman who left her life in Ireland to start one down under. And her name was Jill Mayer.
Born on October the 30th, 1982, to her parents George and Edith McKeon, Jill grew up in Drogheda, located in northeastern Ireland. She grew up in a tiny village in a small family of 4 alongside her brother Michael. Jill was always known to be a happy-go-lucky child, was always seen smiling, and played with all of the neighbouring kids. And the neighbourhood combined knew her as a little Irish beauty. However, the young girl would find herself thrust into a very different lifestyle when she was just 9 years old, when her father George was reassigned to work in the Western Australian city of Perth. From here, she attended Bull Creek Primary School before graduating from Rossamoyne High School. Much like in Ireland, Jill was popular and made many friends in Perth, with her keeping in touch with many of them while she grew up. After 6 years of employment in 1996, her father moved the family back to Ireland, where Jill continued her studies. And after graduating college back in Ireland, Jill would pursue a Bachelor of Arts at the University College of Dublin. Moving forward, her parents moved back to Perth in 2004, when Jill herself was 22. Jill took all of this international moving in her stride, one of the many reasons her future husband, Tom Marr, was attracted to her. The couple never seemed to have a problem, and Tom was smitten with his partner. After graduating, the pair often travelled between Ireland and Australia, frequently visiting both Perth and Melbourne, with Jill travelling for her work in the fashion industry. The pair eventually married in 2008 in Ireland, before taking the plunge and permanently moving to Melbourne in 2009. From here on out, the newlyweds would build a very comfortable life together, with Jill finding permanent work at the Australian broadcasting company known as ABC. And so, the couple settled into a very happy life together, often travelling to Perth and Ireland to see their many friends and family. They were absolutely smitten with each other, happy with their budding lifestyle, and loved their jobs and colleagues, many of whom Jill was close to. Jill spent many weekends away with her gal pals, and would often meet up for coffee or a few drinks after finishing work, visiting the many bars and restaurants that Melbourne is famous for.
So far, so good, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Jill, she came up in a nice household, got a great career, did great in school, and then the unknown is about to happen. And when I say unknown, I'm really saying, is her husband the one who did something to her, or is this gonna be a complete stranger? I don't know, but let's find out.
Things were no different on September the 21st, when Jill and a few of her colleagues decided to have a couple of drinks after work. And taking the distinctive Melbourne tram, they ended up in the inner suburb of Brunswick.
It is here on this vibrant street named Sydney Road that the group headed to a little bar and garden named the Brunswick Green. Following an evening together, Jill and her colleagues shared happy conversations over drinks and snacks. The group then moved on to Parasitic, which could also be found along Sydney Road, but sadly has since closed down. Now Jill, she didn't live too far away from this very street right here, and so she had no worries in travelling home alone. And so, with that in mind, she stayed out to around 1 AM that night with her friends, before eventually making her way home where her husband was waiting for her.
While on the way home, Jill called her brother, Michael. Sadly, their father had fallen ill after having a stroke. Within this phone call, Jill sounded both serious and collected, so it's safe to assume that she was relatively sober and had her wits about her. Shortly after this, she ended the call, returning home in isolation. Back at home, things were getting a little late for Jill's husband, Tom. It was now later than when she said she would be home, which was beginning to worry him. And so, shortly after 2 AM, he tried to call her, but strikingly, he was met with silence. In a panic, he called Jill's family, and that is when her brother confirmed that she was already on her way home a while ago. This further ignited Tom's fear, and so, blinded with worry, he decided to go out and look for her. 4 long, grueling hours passed, and Tom spent all of them driving around Brunswick and its surrounding suburbs, searching high and low for his wife. But sadly, with no luck, he then handed her disappearance to the authorities. Police
I've said it once before, probably like 1,000,000 times before, and I'm gonna say it again, my sisters. I'm talking to my sisters right now. It is just my opinion, man. Do not be walking home or walking anywhere at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, man. You know what I'm saying? It's dark. Everybody at home sleep, but a couple of people out on the roads. Man, it's just a dangerous situation to put yourself in. I hate she even put herself in that situation. And I know she probably did it 1,000 million times before leaving the bar, you know what I'm saying, walking home. But I just feel like that's such a dangerous situation, especially for females. It's like such a vulnerable situation. I think that's the even better word, man. I just feel like y'all, my sisters, man, you're leaving yourself so vulnerable when doing that. And at first I was thinking it probably her husband had something to do with it, but apparently that's not where we going in this story. But either way it goes, man, it's just tragic, and I just hate that she even was walking home by herself. I just feel like you so vulnerable when you do that. But let's go.
Police were on the case fast, with Jill's family and friends actively working with officers to find her as quick as possible. But sadly, all of their efforts were to no avail, and 3 days later, they were still met with silence. As the police searched for her, Jill's friends took to social media to begin an online campaign, using the hashtag #HelpUsFindJillMa on Facebook and Twitter. And although this Facebook page is now defunct, it amassed more than 100,000 followers in only 4 days of searching. And on Twitter, you can still see many desperate pleas for her safety. Data forensic teams could roughly trace Jill's movements using her mobile phone data, and sadly, the results were worrying. As we know, Jill left the bar at roughly 1:40 AM in the relatively central suburb of Brunswick. And although the signal would show that she got relatively close to home, she then began to veer off track at speed. Her phone appeared to travel northwest, driving by Tullamarine Airport and then Sunbury, before finally arriving in the isolated town of Gisborne. By now, the public had become well aware of Jill's disappearance, and many were worried that this may transpire to be a homicide.
Yeah, the tracking of the phone let us know that she was kidnapped. That's what that let us know right there. She was kidnapped. Somebody grabbed her and threw her in their car. Now I don't know if she was even alive or dead while she was in. I hate to say stuff like this, man. But hey, that's what we do. We keep it real over here, y'all. And like I said, man, I don't even know if she was alive or dead at this point. But we know that she more than likely was kidnapped.
A break would soon come for the authorities when they found Jill's handbag here on Hope Street, just a stone's throw away from the bar she was last seen at. However, what was strange is that the authorities had already searched this street in the hours after her disappearance, so none of this made any sense to the investigation. It turns out that a local shopkeeper had actually found the bag just after her disappearance, but after hearing about her on the news, he panicked and returned it to where he found it. Now, it is confirmed that this is usually the route that Jill would have taken home, and so finding her bag here made total sense.
Worryingly, forensic experts would also realize a flat patch of earth near where the bag was found, which sadly can often indicate sexual assault.
Homicide Squad detectives have taken over the investigation into missing person Gillian Marr. Gillian was last seen at Bar Etiquette in Sydney Road, Brunswick, in the early hours of Saturday morning. She has not been sighted since. This morning, a handbag was located in a laneway off Hope Street in Brunswick, and we've recently confirmed that the contents of that handbag belong to Gillian. So we're appealing for anyone that may be able to help us with regard to Gillian's disappearance. We're particularly interested to hear from anyone from Bar Etiquette that may have seen Gillian in the early hours of Saturday morning or walking along Sydney Road in Brunswick.
With this information now available to the public, local businesses in the area scoured their surveillance cameras with more scrutiny, desperately searching for any sign of Jill or what may have happened to her. That is when, the very next day, after the discovery of her bag, a glimmer of hope and fear came in the form of surveillance footage. On the northern end of Sydney Road, and just around the corner from Hope Street where Jill's bag was found, a surveillance camera captured what is known to be her last recorded sighting.
This shop behind me, formerly known as the Duchess Boutique, captured this surveillance footage. Since then, the company's moved due to unwanted attention, and since then is once again up for sale.
The surveillance footage shows the view from a camera pointing out the front window of the old store. A man in a blue hoodie can be seen walking by, which initially is nothing unusual. But what is strange is that this camera records him going back and forth and back again. The camera then captures a glimpse of a young woman walking by, resembling Jill on the night that she disappeared. And worryingly, she appears to be talking to this man in the blue hoodie. They briefly stop for a moment, where Jill then appears to show the man something on her phone. It is assumed that maybe he was asking her for directions. That is when they both end up walking the same way. Combining all of this evidence currently available, it became evident to the authorities that this was now a potential case of assault and even possibly homicide. Jill's movements could be traced from the Brunswick Green, heading north on Sydney Road before turning into Hope Street, where her bag was then found adjacent to Oven Street. And the camera which recorded this surveillance footage was directly on that pathway. But this case required further forensic investigation to help blow the case wide open. And thankfully, a team of forensic officers had already been hard at work in the background.
Man, I just gotta say two things, y'all, real quick. Number one, the fact that whoever did this to her left her bag behind, it's almost like he didn't care about getting caught. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't even try to take that evidence with him. Like, all these freaking murderers are dumb anyway. But I'm saying if this makes sense to y'all, if you're gonna be a smart murderer, you would take her freaking bag so that evidence wouldn't be left behind for the forensic team to have to, you know what I'm saying, use as a possibility of or a way to connect you to murdering or doing a sexually assaulting or whatever to her. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I want to say. And number two is just watching that surveillance footage, y'all. It's just like so freaking terrifying when you know the end result of what happened. Because like I said, my sisters, you looking at this lady on the streets by herself, just left a bar. It's 1, 2 in the morning, and this strange man come up trying to act like he asking for directions or whatever. Like, don't even talk to no strangers on the streets at that time in the morning. Keep it moving. Don't even put yourself in that situation. Long story short, story long. Like, it's just so effed up to see her in that situation right there. Even though at that point, she probably didn't even think she was in danger. And I'm pretty sure that Jill had a great heart. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of y'all out there have a great heart. We have great hearts. Yeah, we want to be nice and cordial to everybody we meet. But meeting a man, a stranger, on the streets at 1, 2 in the morning, that's just, oh man, that's terrible, y'all. That just was an effed up situation. Let's go.
The digital trail left behind by Jill's phone, they checked all available surveillance footage from public and private allotments. And fortunately for them, this cat and mouse investigation revealed one car that was consistently present throughout the journey. The vehicle was captured along Sydney Road and Hope Street, where Jill was last seen. But what was odd is that this was at 4:17 AM, that being almost 3 hours after she was caught on camera. The vehicle was then spotted again at a Sunbury gas station, which can be found halfway towards Gisborne, where Jill's phone was last detected. In this footage, the driver could be spotted wearing a beanie and a blue hoodie similar to the one in the shop's surveillance footage. Furthermore, it wasn't hard to identify the man behind the vehicle's wheel, and that's because he was already well acquainted with local officers for all of the wrong reasons. And this man's name was Adrian Ernest Bailey. And so, on September the 27th, 2012, the authorities decided to pay Adrian a little visit. After knocking on the front door of his house in Coburg, he was arrested on the spot on suspicion of involvement in Jill's disappearance. But who precisely was this 41-year-old man? And why were the authorities so sure that he was potentially responsible for Jill's silence? Well, unfortunately, they did have valid doubts, because to put it bluntly, this man was an utter monster. Adrian's criminal history began in the year 1990 at the age of 19 years old, when, during this time frame, he attacked a girl who was waiting at a bus stop. Now, thankfully, she did manage to get away from him before he could pin her down, but his failure here would not dissuade him in the future. Later that very same year, he then attempted to sexually assault a 16-year-old hitchhiker. After being arrested, he pleaded guilty to both cases, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison with a minimum of 3 years to be served. However, for one outlandish reason or another, he was then released in 1993 after serving a measly 22 months for his crimes. And as far as we know,
here we go again, man. This man did all this egregious stuff to these two women, and all he did is serve 22 months. What he supposed to learn from that? Like, dude, you letting him out back on the street so he gonna do this damn same thing he already did. Like, I don't understand it, man. I just don't understand it. I'm not finna go on no tangent, y'all. I'm not finna do it right now. I'm gonna say that for later. But I'm just saying, god damn, man. Like, dude, what do you expect him to do?
he then behaved himself for the next 7 years.
That would be until the turn of the new millennium. In the year 2000, in the beautiful coastal suburb of St Kilda, evil was afoot once again. Adrian was on the prowl. It has to be said, but I hate sharing a name with this guy. It is very rare to find another Adrian in this world, and of course, it has to be with this dickhead. St Kilda is well known for its beautiful beach.
Hey, I was thinking that way earlier, man. It is so crazy that he got the same name as the coffee man. Adrian, the coffee man. You sharing the same name as with a dickhead. Let's go.
Luna Park and its shopping strip. On that strip, you can find many cafes and restaurants, filled with tourists and young adults alike. But Adrian would leave a scar in this community when 5 women, many of them prostitutes, came forward to accuse him of assault. Eventually, in the year 2002, he was found guilty of 8 counts of sexual assault and was sentenced to 11 years behind bars with a minimum of 8.
Adrian would only serve the minimum sentence and be released in 2010, and 2 years later, he then met his next documented victim, Jill Marr. With Adrian confessing to his previous crimes, we can only assume that he would do the same thing for Jill's disappearance, and you would be correct in believing this. Adrian would ultimately fold during his interrogation, which took place over several hours, led by Detective Paul Rowe. Now, initially, Adrian played a helpful and innocent character. He first claimed that he and his girlfriend had gone out to a bar, but after arguing over trivial matters, he returned home to spend the night alone. However, with the surveillance footage at hand, detectives knew that this story was a lie. To Adrian, it seemed like he'd gotten away with it using his carefree attitude. But after being slowly presented with various articles of evidence, he realized that things were not so easy. Of course, with this evidence ranging from him talking to Jill to his journey out of the suburbs towards Sunbury and Gisborne. As more and more evidence stacked up, Adrian's demeanor progressively changed. He became more quiet, defensive, and even dumbfounded. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when he was presented with Jill Maher's SIM card, which was found in a warranted search of his home. When asked where it came from, all Adrian could repeat was, "I don't know how to explain it.
I know you don't know how to explain it, because you can't, because your ass is caught. You caught, bro.
I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to explain it." Adrian broke down and began to sob. And in true narcissistic fashion, his interview suddenly became all about him, about how he wanted to get things off his chest and how he was a good person. And that is when the truth finally came pouring out. Adrian told detectives that he assaulted Jill after she had rebuffed his advances towards her. He claimed that after touching her, she slapped him, and that is when he saw red. He pushed her down, assaulted her, and then, when she told him she'd be calling the police, he silenced her by pressing down on her neck. And although she tried to fight back, Adrian was sadly far stronger than she was. He then left the scene, drove back to his home in Coburg to collect a shovel, and returned at 4:17 AM. That of course being when his car was caught by a camera entering the laneways. He then loaded her into the trunk, took her body to Gisborne, and buried her in a shallow grave. Paul appealed to his honesty with compassion, and on September the 28th, 2012, Adrian agreed to show them where Jill was. It turns out,
And that's why I was saying earlier, y'all, like, I didn't know when he kidnapped her if she was alive or dead when she actually got into his car. And come to find out, she got into his car, but she didn't get into the front or back seat. He put her in the trunk because she was already deceased. Like, it's like this dude just spazzed out all of a sudden, just... Man, see, that's what I'm saying, y'all. It was so late in the damn morning till when it wasn't a lot of people around. If it would have been 1 in the afternoon, he wouldn't be able to do what he did to her. You know what I'm saying, man? So it's just like, I know I keep repeating it, my sisters. I know I keep saying it, but y'all just don't be out that time in the morning walking by y'allself, down the street, downtown, down the highway, down anyway. Don't do it.
out that she had been buried in a grave close to where her phone last pinged. And so, in the end, detectives were correct with their investigation. Forensic pathologists would also confirm that the cause of her death was compression of the neck, and that, furthermore, they could find lacerations all across her body. With all of the evidence that they needed, he was now formally arrested for the assault and murder of Jill Maher and placed into police custody. Shortly after, he would make a feeble attempt to take his own life, but was unsuccessful. Moving into the legal proceedings of this case, Adrian would have the nerve to try to contend his case and claim innocence. In this, he tried to play the well-meaning victim who never meant to harm Jill. However, it soon became apparent that the evidence against him was simply way too strong. And so, in April of 2013, and in a desperate plea to reduce his future sentence, Adrian Bailey pleaded guilty to the rape and murder of Jill Maher. Later that month, he pleaded not guilty to 3 other separate charges of assault on other women, which, by the way, is only 3 of the 20 that were publicly known at the time. Now, much to Adrian's dismay, when his pre-sentencing hearing took place, the judge lifted the suppression order on his previous convictions. This meaning that his prior convictions could be revealed and considered when deliberating his sentence. This information spread like wildfire, causing a surge in the public's desire to see the man rot behind bars for the rest of his life. And so, finally, in June of 2013, Adrian Ernest Bailey was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 35 years. However,
Whoo! I'll take that much. I'll take that, y'all. I'll take that. Life without parole for at least 35 years. Y'all know how I am. He shouldn't be no years. Your life without parole, point blank period. You know what I'm saying? But I'll take that much because this dude has done so much to so many different women out here.
the final nail in the coffin was yet to come for him, because 2 years later, 3 more women came forward to claim that they were assaulted by him. These 3 new charges increased his sentence by an additional 18 years, and further forced his parole back from 35 to 43. This means that Adrian will only be eligible for parole at the ripe old age of 95, making
I'll take it, baby. We'll take it. That's just a roundabout way of telling Adrian your ass gonna die in prison. Cause he ain't getting out of no fucking 95. But yeah, man, please, man. Your ass is done, bro. Your ass is grass. Thank you, man. Thank you. All these women he have assaulted over these years, y'all. Like, man, I just feel like he should have been locked up long time ago. Jill shouldn't even had to be a victim of him. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of other victims, I don't know, man. I'm just happy that he freaking locked up for life.
It highly unlikely that he will ever see the light of day again. As a direct result of Jill Maher's case, laws against parolees in Victoria were tightened quite significantly. In effect, Jill has now saved countless other women from reoffending dirtbags. But sadly, this information comes with poison. It's a tragedy to know that her story had to happen for these changes to be made.
That's true. That's true too. I was looking at it from one side, man. That man, Jill could have been saved because it was a lot of other women before her that had got attacked or whatever. But then you got to look at it on the other side too. Now that that happened to Jill, unfortunately, rest in peace, but that happening to her saved a lot of other women in the future from being a victim of this guy. So it goes both ways, man, but it still leaves a sour taste in my mouth that she had to lose her life for this. But at the same time, man, I am happy, y'all. Like, I'm so freaking happy that he got life in prison. Right in hell, you fucking bastard.
This case is one that shook Melbourne to its very core. Jill's name could be found all over the news, both here in Australia and back at home in the UK. Many women who formerly felt safe in this beautiful city temporarily lost all sense of security. It was only after Adrian was convicted that their confidence was restored. Interesting fact, but in the year 2021, Melbourne was ranked to be the 8th safest city in the world. Still, that doesn't mean that anyone is ever safe from a monster with a motive. Jill Maher fell in love with the city for all of the reasons that I have too. And with its vibrant, friendly and cultural background, it fit her personality perfectly. Now, some of you will remember that around 2 years ago, I covered the case of Sarah Kafferke and her killer, Stephen Hunter. Interesting fact, but Stephen and Adrian beat the shit out of each other in prison just last year. I guess you could say that monsters seldom get along with each other.
Although Adrian was stopped in his tracks after murdering Jill, sometimes others aren't caught quickly enough. And sadly, that would be the case for Melbourne's most notorious serial killer.
Uh-oh.
Now, for this story, I first have to take you beachside. The southern suburbs of Melbourne are home to extraordinary beaches, sprightly high streets, and some of the best markets that I've ever come across. You have the likes of St Kilda, Elwood, and then Malvern. Stretching further down the coast brings you to Brighton, and further afar, down to the suburb of Frankston, where our next story takes place.
Frankston can be found around 25 miles south of Melbourne, and in its previous years was considered to be one of the roughest suburbs to live in. This was usually due to petty crimes such as theft, burglary, and the occasional bar fight. Well, I say occasionally, but it's more like a Friday night ritual here. Although this is what Frankston was previously known for, the council has since tried to improve its reputation in and around town. One of its most scenic areas is right here at Frankston Pier, which has recently been voted one of Melbourne's cleanest beaches. However, if you cast yourself back to the 90s, you would be rather shocked to realise how far this destination has come in recent decades.
In fact, today, we'll be visiting that bygone era and turning the clocks back all the way to 1993, when there was one gripping thing on all of the locals' radar. And of course, I'm talking about murder. It was a year where terror swept across the area of Frankston and Seaford. A series of disturbing events would occur over the space of several months, but they would only find out who was behind them after the lives of 3 innocent people were taken. We begin this story in February of 1993 between both of these two towns, where a woman living next to the train station of Kananook on Claude Street reported a very chilling incident. The household comprised of Donna Vaines, her husband, and their newborn child. She had previously contacted the police over several mysterious and threatening phone calls being made to her landline, which eventually worried her so much that she was too scared to go anywhere alone. Becoming so frightened by the anonymous calls, Donna asked her husband if she and the baby could stay with him while he delivered pizzas. Just 1 hour later, the family returned home, and they were met with an agonizingly horrific scene. Blood covered the kitchen floor, and upon closer inspection, they found the body of their cat. Tragically, it had been violently murdered. A pornographic image had been placed on its lifeless body, with the words, "Donna, you are dead," written in blood. The horror didn't stop there. In the bathroom, police discovered 2 dead kittens in the bathtub, and in the bedroom, more explicit images had been pasted over the wardrobe. Even the innocent bed of their newborn baby wasn't safe. Inside of it was yet another explicit image. Understandably, this terrified the family beyond all measures. After this incident, they wanted nothing to do with the apartment, deciding to move out that very night.
Hell yeah, I'll move out that bitch that same night. That is a crate. Like, I be thinking some of this stuff, y'all, like I be trying to apply it to movies. Like, that sound like some movie-ish. And if it was a movie, that's some crazy-ish. This whoever killing all these cats, leaving them dead, but not only killing the cats and leaving them dead and but writing letters and names or whatever, words with the cat's blood. But for some reason, they leaving pornographic images on the cats and stuff. Like, dude, this is next level craziness right now that's going on, y'all, that make it seem like it's a movie. But no, it is freaking real life. Let's go.
Result, they moved in with Donna's sister nearby, but little did they know that the evil they were trying to escape was now far closer than ever before. Although no human in this situation was hurt, it did seem obvious to the police that they were dealing with an extremely dangerous individual, and unfortunately, just a few months later, another terrible incident occurred. On June the 11th of that same year, a family called the authorities after their relative from overseas had gone missing. The family were searching for an 18-year-old student named Elizabeth Stevens. At the time of her disappearance, she had moved to Melbourne from Tasmania and was staying with her aunt and uncle. And now, with her missing for several hours, her family, both near and far, were growing worried.
Sadly, all efforts to find Elizabeth would be in vain. Instead, her body was found here in Lloyd Park Reserve by a man who was collecting branches. Tragically, she was found only 250 meters from her home in this beautiful park. Her body had been covered in bushland. It was obvious from the outset that Elizabeth was dead. She had been strangled, her throat had been cut, and she had multiple stab wounds across her body. Witnesses reported seeing her walking hand in hand with a man the evening prior, assuming that he was her partner. Only, unknown to them at the time, she was actually single.
Now, it is possible that she was threatened and forced to hold the man's hand under direct order, eliciting the facade of a relationship that would not concern others nearby. Regardless, and sadly, it was all too late to save Elizabeth. Her death traumatized her family and friends, and left the community of Frankston in fear. Just 1 month later, in the early evening of July the 8th, a local was driving by Seaford North Reserve when a visibly panicked woman ran onto the road and flagged him down. She claimed to have been attacked by an armed gunman and urgently needed help. The woman's name was Roger Toth, and once she was back at her home, she called the police immediately. With Roger having a similar profile to Elizabeth and it being in the same area as her murder, the authorities believed that the same killer must have conducted this. And this incident would become even more worrying when a second call came through later that very same evening. Another woman failed to return home after popping out to buy some milk. And with a 12-day-old baby back at home, the father was desperately worried. The missing woman, named Deborah Freem, was reported to the police within the hour. However, tragically, all search efforts to find her alive would be in vain. And just 4 days later, on July the 12th, her body was discovered by a farmer on Taylor's Road in Carham Downs.
I mean, this man is going on like a killing spree. Like, he, in the same night, is attacking multiple women. Like, man, it's so real. Like, you want to think it's a movie, my brothers and sisters. Like, you want to just think that that's the type of stuff that you hear and see in movies. But this is real life, man. It is real life.
Being a short drive from Frankston and Seaford. It appeared that the local authorities had a killer with a distinct drive for violence towards women on their hands. Within just a few months, the towns had experienced 2 murders and several other terrifying incidents. A wave of speculation and fear coasted the beachside community. A public warning was announced, and fear was spread far and wide amongst the public. And with so much at stake, the pressure was on for local authorities to track, find, and then end Frankston's new killer.
Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, the authorities were not quick enough to stop whoever was behind these attacks, because on the evening of July the 30th, 1993, yet another phone call came through. A 17-year-old student named Natalie Russell was reported as missing. She was last seen walking home from John Paul College, found behind me when she suddenly vanished. Witnesses reported seeing her walk along this fenced pathway back towards Frankston North Station, which was her typical walk back home. Her disappearance was very concerning to officers. Not only did her profile match previous victims, but the location did too. With that in mind, officers realized that they may be dealing with a newly emerging serial killer. The Frankston serial killer was born. And with that said, the community around Frankston started to grow with fear.
And so, an extensive search operation to find Natalie officially began. Detectives started their investigation at 3 basic points of interest, that being her school, the station, and her home. After interviewing those who worked at the station, they determined that she likely never arrived to catch her train, meaning that the authorities could concentrate their efforts between the school and the station. It didn't take long for detectives to find rather concerning clues along the fenced walkway that led towards that station. Running between 2 golf courses on Sky Road, the walkway was lengthy and far from surrounding neighborhoods. And furthermore, most of the path was surrounded by bushes and trees. Officers soon found a sizable hole along the fence line, which was big enough for an adult to fit through. It seemed that the bush through the hole had been disturbed, with branches snapped and foliage nearby appeared to be slightly flattened. And upon closer inspection, detectives noticed that 3 holes had been cut along different areas of the same fence line, all of which had been cut using the same tool. And then came the morbid clues. One of those holes contained skin, blood, and hair. After entering the hole, officers made a horrific discovery. Just meters away from the track, in a small clearing of shrubbery, lay the body of Natalie Russell. Similar to previous victims, she'd been sexually assaulted and her throat had been cut.
Then whoever this dude is a complete freaking maniac. And he don't really freaking care at all, man. Just to do that to her and leave her body like literally on the scene. You know what I'm saying? He didn't try to dispose of, get rid of her or whatever. I hate saying stuff like that, y'all. But y'all get what I'm saying, man. Like, he just freaking didn't care. Left her body right there for the police to find. It's just, I hope this guy get life in prison like the first story. Hell, this motherfucker need the death penalty like the first story if you ask me. But let's go.
Police now had a 3rd victim on their hands, but this one was different. Natalie had put up a tremendous fight against her assailant, meaning that this time they were able to collect DNA samples of the killer's hair, skin, and blood. Meanwhile, the detectives who also covered the initial break-in and the assault against Rosha Toth now had more information to work with. Rosha described her aggressor as being about 20 years old, tall, with a round face and blue eyes. And although this is now a somewhat archaic practice, police drew up a profile of their suspected killer to be distributed to the public. Side note, but this method is seldom used nowadays as it can give people a false impression of the murderer, and furthermore, can give the killer a heads up to change their appearance if they feel they need to do so. The authorities were on the lookout for a young adult male, likely unemployed or with a menial job, who lived alone in the local area and was likely average looking. They also conducted an extensive door-knocking campaign with this information, visiting over 47 homes in the local area. At the time, this was the most extensive door-knocking campaign in the history of the state of Victoria, but despite their efforts, it would end with nothing. But finally, authorities had a lead. It's just tragic that it took Natalie's death for one to come through.
At 2:30 p.m. on the day of Natalie's disappearance, a postal worker spotted a yellow rusty Toyota Corolla near this fenced walkway in Frankston. The postie also noticed a man using binoculars in the area, and with this happening at a time before mobile phones were regularly available, he then walked to the local police station to report this strange behaviour. After arriving, the authorities determined the car's license plate. However, none of the neighbours knew who this car belonged to. Not that they needed their input, because later that day, they were quick to trace the car's owner. And that is when they learned of the name Paul Charles Denyer. And so, on July the 31st, 1993, officers made their way to his apartment on Frankston Dandenong Road, which is only 1 mile away from where Natalie disappeared.
After arriving and knocking at the unit, police were greeted by a woman who just happened to be Paul's girlfriend at the time. Paul was polite and pleasant, and even invited officers inside. His demeanour gave them no reason to be suspicious or concerned. But upon closer inspection, the officers noticed that Paul's hands were dirty and covered in cuts. Officers asked Paul what he was doing near the location of Natalie's murder, to which he had no distinct answer for them. Next, they asked him what he'd been up to during the time Elizabeth and Deborah were murdered. But again, he was unable to comment with any sort of precision. The lack of information from Paul was worrying to the officers, and sadly, it wouldn't stop there. After interviewing several of his neighbours, many reported burglaries which were similar to the initial ones seen at the Vanes' residence, but thankfully without as much bloodshed. Speaking of the Vanes family, it turned out that Donna Vane's sister lived in the same block of flats as Paul Denyer, meaning that Donna, her husband, and their newborn child unknowingly moved substantially closer to the man who had threatened them. And so, with many leads pointing towards 21-year-old Paul Denyer, he was taken into police custody for questioning. But who precisely was this strange and rather suspicious man? Paul Charles Denyer was born.
All I can say is the dude looked crazy as hell, y'all. Like, he looked like he a freaking murderer. Now, I know I may sound wrong for saying that. I shouldn't say that seriously, though, because you can't judge a book by its cover. But I'm not even talking about his little child photo. I'm talking about the photo before that. Rewind back, man, and just look at him and tell me he don't look like a freaking serial killer, man. And it is crazy that they end up moving closer to a fucking serial killer. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy that they got that close to him, but this still shouldn't have happened, man. But it's just what it is, y'all. It is what it is, y'all. Let's go.
On April 4th, 1972, to his British immigrant parents, Anthony and Maureen Denyer. He grew up in Campbelltown, found on the outskirts of Sydney, before moving to Victoria for his father's work in 1981, meaning he made the move at 9 years old. Now, many say that this move took its toll on Paul's mental health as a child, as he never really assimilated into his new surroundings once moving to Melbourne. But personally, as someone who moved from the US to the UK as a child, I'm calling bullshit on this excuse. Anyway, for the sake of what is reported, Paul never really fit in with the other kids, leading to him failing all of his grades while facing a forever dwindling self-confidence.
This change in scenery was the beginning of Paul's downfall. From here onwards, he began to exhibit extremely concerning behaviour. To begin with, at the tender age of 11, he slashed his sister's teddy bear's throat right in front of her eyes. And although this may seem harmless enough, the next step would not be. That very same year, and still at the incredibly young age of just 11 years old, he slashed the family cat's throat and then hung it from a tree. By 13, he was arrested for stealing a car, and by 15, he was arrested and charged for assaulting a classmate. After graduating from high school, Paul tried his hand in various jobs, but was fired from all of them due to poor attendance, terrible behavior, and laziness. And all of this brings us to the year 1993, where Paul was 21, unemployed, and suspected of murdering 3 innocent women. And with so many questions in mind, his interrogation began the very day he was arrested.
Let me tell
I mean, this dude, man, from a little child, everybody should have known that he was from Cuckoo Land. From a little child, everybody should have known he was crazy as hell, man. This dude slicing the necks of dolls, then he moved to the family cat. You know what I'm saying? This man been crazy. From a child, like, I don't know what y'all could have done to help prevent what he will become as an adult, but I feel like something could have been done. This man is crazy. Like I said, that damn picture, man, I know I'm supposed to judge a book by its cover, but in that picture, he looked like he was crazy as hell. Now let's hear this interrogation.
you, this interview was a strange one to say the least. Paul was caught out on multiple questions, making it abundantly clear that the truth was far from the story he had formulated in his mind, and also indicating that he may have something to do with the recent murders of these local women. For example, when the interview began, detectives highlighted that his hands were covered in cuts, and, as I've mentioned, blood was found on the jagged fencing at the scene of Natalie's murder.
Continuing, I must inform you that you're not obliged to say or do anything, but anything you say or do may be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
What is your age and date of birth?
I'm 21 years old. I was born on the 14th of April 1972.
Okay. Are you an Australian citizen?
Yep.
Are you currently employed?
No, I'm unemployed at the present time.
All we'd like to do, Paul, is if you could just run through, starting with yesterday morning.
I got up in the morning about 20 to 8, 7:30, 20 to 8.
Right.
As I was coming down, say, past Coringle Drive, I noticed temperature gauge started to go right up to high. So I just pulled over in Sky Road.
Yeah.
And right across the road is, your golf course and everything. So I pulled up there and I checked under the car, under the bonnet, and found out the hose had come loose.
When we saw you down at your flat this afternoon, I noticed a number of cuts on your fingers.
Yeah.
Can you just put your hands flat on the desk here, so that you can, just right up here. This injury here is a long sort of a cut. Just explain how you got that injury and when you got that injury.
I got it yesterday when I was working on the car.
How are you saying it occurred?
Well, the fan spins this way, so if I'm standing at the front of the car, like here, fan spins that way, the alternator sits there, and there's some wires running down underneath the bottom of the radiator. There's a wire at the top, which was for a light that I just recently put on, and it must have been when I was putting my hand down there, I caught the fan.
Why did you have it running at that stage when you were checking the radiator?
Clumsy worker on cars.
The most disturbing detail about
This man full of shit.
this is that upon closer inspection of his hands, his fingernails were still brown with what appeared to be dried blood under them. This potentially being a trophy to the grisly murder which took place. Tragically, anyone examining the crime scene of Natalie's murder would have agreed that it would have been almost impossible for her assailant not to be covered in her blood. What's even more puzzling and out of place is when Paul was asked what he was doing on the days of these murders, he could now accurately recall every single hour of the day. This included what he was up to and why, which was suspicious to investigators, as this was not a usual response in the interrogation room. After all, if those 3 days were just like any other, then why would you mentally note everything that had happened in such great detail?
Yesterday, your car was parked opposite the location where the body of Natalie Russell was found. On the night that Debbie Freem disappeared, you walked over to Kennedall Railway Station, missed the train and walked back. And on the night Elizabeth Stevens disappeared, you walked in a very close proximity to Lloyd Park on your way to pick up this battery. Do you think that's fairly coincidental?
Yeah, it is.
In all the circumstances?
Yeah.
Are you responsible for the deaths of any of these women?
No.
As you can probably tell from Paul's deafening silence when asked if he had anything to do with these murders, he was internally debating if he was in too deep to make it out of custody. I mean, he had even consented to his DNA being taken and compared to that found at the crime scene. So he
done then. You're a dummy. You consented to giving up your DNA? Really, bro? You caught. But no, man, did y'all see how he just paused and was just dumbfounded? He was at a loss for words because in his brain running 1,000,000 miles per hour trying to come up with a lie, trying to just get up out of this situation. How could I make up another lie? You know what I'm saying, man? Your ass is caught, dude. You need to be dead because you took the life of other people. Straight up.
He kind of knew that the game was already over. At this point in the interrogation, the leading detective left the room and left Paul to his own spiraling thoughts. Before doing so, he showed absolute compassion by offering the man coffee and anything else that he might want. And this was when Paul realized that it was all over for him. With regret, he reluctantly confessed to his own deplorable actions.
You spoke to Detective O'Loughlin here, and you told Detective O'Loughlin that you were responsible for the murders of the three women. Is that correct? Just tell us in your own words, Paul, what happened in relation to the death of Elizabeth Stevens at Langwarrin.
I saw her get off the bus. I walked up behind her, stuck my left hand around her, ran her mouth like this and held a gun to my head right here. I started choking her with my hands, and she passed out after a while. And then I pulled out the knife.
Okay.
And I dragged her to where she was found. Then I threw 2 branches on her body.
Can you tell me why you attacked her on that night?
Just had the feeling, that's all.
What sort of feeling? Can you possibly describe it, where you had this feeling?
Just wanted to kill.
After this damning and finite confession, Paul was more than willing to recount the murders in excruciating detail, including how, when, and why he committed these crimes. In short, it seemed that he had a burning desire to kill women. He also showed the investigators exactly where he attacked his victims, recounted his actions in great detail, and talked as if he was both excited and detached from the crime itself. Paul Denyer showed no remorse or empathy as he recalled his behaviour, a telltale sign of someone with a variation or kind of emotional personality disorder. And alongside admitting to the murders, he also admitted to the attack on Russia Toth on the same night he murdered Debbie, saying that if she hadn't got away, she almost certainly would have met the same fate as the other women. These women were not his only victims. Paul went on to admit that he had been stalking women around the Frankston area for multiple years already. Furthermore, he found gratification in tormenting women and making them feel scared. Now, we can only assume that Paul had been doing this for 6 or 7 years already. In addition to this, he also confessed that he'd harbored the urge to kill someone since he was just 14 years old. In total,
now, it's one thing, my brothers and sisters, that we watched a lot of videos where freaking murderers, they denied to the death of them. I didn't do it. I'm innocent. It ain't me. It's not me. But goddamn, it's another thing to see somebody be so innocent and give just the exact details, show you the exact locations of how they did it and all that. It's like, it's 2 different sides of the spectrum, but both of them is freaking crazy, man. He he was being so vivid and candid about how he murdered these women and exactly what he did to them. And it's just like, dude, do you know what you're telling me right now? It's not okay. This is not cool what you're telling me right now. I appreciate you being honest about it. I do. But it's still just crazy as hell. Let's go.
Paul Denya's interrogation lasted for approximately 5 hours. Now, this may sound emotionally taxing, but this wasn't very long considering he had to cover 3 separate murders, 1 assault, and his morbid history. In fact, during his interrogation, Paul talked about women with great disdain and hatred. It was evident that, for one reason or another, he held a lot of anger towards them, which is a remarkably worrying observation when considering he had a girlfriend at the time.
Crazy.
On December the 20th, 1993, after 4 days of hearings, Paul Denya was officially charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 abduction, all of which he did not deny in court. It seemed that he had succumbed to his fate and accepted the consequences of his actions. Psychologists observed that Paul lacked any emotions regarding his crimes and had a single-minded desire to kill. This eventually led to a diagnosis of sadistic personality disorder, but was not a legally classed insanity. Paul's forensic psychologist would go on to say he found intentional maltreatment of victims to be insanely gratifying, taking pleasure in torment, anguish, distress, hopelessness, and suffering of the victim. In contrast to simple anger, the behavior of sadistic personality is fully premeditated. He is not suddenly exploding with rage. The more aggressive he became, the more powerful he felt. Melbourne's Supreme Court sentenced Paul to 3 consecutive life sentences with no option for parole. Despite this, just 11 days later, he lodged an appeal which was eventually addressed several months later. I wish I could say that this was denied, but unfortunately, his appeal worked. Ignoring the fact that he sadistically murdered 3 young women and multiple cats, he was granted the possibility of parole after 30 years behind bars.
Are you fucking kidding me, man? Are you fucking kidding me, man? This man had three, uno, dos, tres life sentences, consecutive. No parole. And just because he make an appeal, now he got a chance to get out after 30 years. Like, dude, it's all around the world, my brothers and sisters, just the judicial system or whatever it's called. I still don't know the correct terminology for it. Whatever it is, man, it's just F the F up. That's crazy.
Meaning he would have been eligible for release just last year in 2023. During his time in prison, Paul underwent a change of identity and quite the transformation. 10 years into his sentence, and in the year 2003, he revealed that he wanted to transition to female, stating in one of his written letters, "I committed these disgusting crimes not because I hated womankind, but because I never felt that I was male." Paul, now named Paula, began to wear women's clothing and cosmetics in prison, although he was advised not to for quite obvious reasons. Medical professionals evaluated Paula and found that she was not viable for gender reassignment surgery, as they did not believe this transition was genuine. Eventually, Paula would revert back to identifying as Paul shortly after his initial transition. Many believe this was just a stunt to gain access to a safer and more relaxed prison environment, so he could be placed either in a women's prison or in his own confinement. Now personally, I find it quite sickening for a man who abused and murdered multiple women in some of the most horrific ways possible to believe that they could simply become one instead. Now, as
the audacity, Coffee Man. The audacity of this man. You hate women. This was your whole reason why you was killing them. You just you don't like women. You got a personal vendetta with all women out here. And then all of a sudden you want to become a woman? Like, bro, the audacity of you want to be something that you hate. Really? That makes sense? Come on, man. Like, I don't have no problem with transgender people out here at all. But a person who says that they hate a gender and then now all of a sudden they want to become that gender, this dude here is just full of shit. And then after he become that gender, he switched back to his original gender. Man, why? man, this man's supposed to be dead. I'm just gonna say it, y'all. Freak it. He supposed to been had the death penalty a long time ago, man. This is a person that you just don't even allow to breathe anymore, especially after he took the lives of all those women.
Mentioned, Paul Denyer became eligible for parole just last year, and, no surprise, applied for release. Thankfully, this was denied, and he still resides in Port Phillip prison to this very day. This came as a relief to the families of his victims, as, to this day, they still believe he should never see the light of day again.
Nope.
These three women never deserved the fate that fell upon them. Each of them had most of their lives ahead of them, and had aspirations and dreams moving forward. And tragically, they lost their lives in one of the most terrifying ways possible. Elizabeth Stevens travelled to Melbourne to seek further education and better herself so that she could eventually join the armed services. Deborah Freem was a loving new mother who left the house to provide for her growing family. And Natalie Russell, an aspirational student innocently walking home from college, who fought against her assailant bravely. The deaths of these three women have left a hole in three grieving families and dozens of friends, all of whom still remember them to this day.
Natalie's tragic death allowed the authorities to find, charge and convict a dangerous serial killer with violent and sadistic tendencies. No doubt, without her, he would have gone on to kill countless other women. We can only hope that the families of his victims will find peace in knowing that he'll potentially be behind bars for the rest of his life. Let's hope that he's never given that second chance.
Yes.
Following the tragic events which took place behind me, this pathway has now been renamed as Nat's Track in her memory.
A bench in Natalie's name rests on the southern side of the track, resting next to a statue of a bag filled with 17 flowers, each daisy representing and celebrating a year of her life. Natalie's name is visibly written at the entrance to her pathway, and surveillance cameras have since been installed to keep other travellers on this pathway safe.
Our third and final case today is slightly different to the previous two, and will be sure to leave you with many questions, and that's the puzzling disappearance of Jake Lyons. Statistically speaking, more than 96% of disappearances in Australia are eventually solved. This is much higher than America's 85%, but unfortunately, Jake would not fit into that number.
Damn.
Jake's disappearance, which happened here in the suburb of Dandenong North, was strange to say the least, and left his family riddled with confusion. And when I say that his disappearance was strange, I really do mean it. So much so that there are now many theories as to what may have happened.
Scaling back to the year 2014, Jake was a young adult who was heavily into video games. He had several friends in the area, but spent most of his hours in the day gaming or chilling in his room. His family described him as very friendly and selfless to those he loved. He also excelled in school and was known to be very intelligent. Now, despite his calm demeanor, intelligence, and prosperous future, Jake also expressed feelings of emotional detachment and depression throughout his life. But family and friends were not too worried because Jake seemed to have it together. After all, he did have aspirations for his future and expressed that one day he would like to join the military. However, on an average day in August of 2014, all of this changed when Jake unexpectedly disappeared, and a trail of baffling evidence left behind would confuse his loved ones and the authorities. August the 24th, 2014 began like any other day. Jake's parents made their way to work, with his mother leaving early in the morning and his father Rick shortly after. Rick recalls nothing seeming out of the ordinary, and with this being a Sunday, Jake was expected to stay home all day. However, when Rick returned home later that day, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. To begin with, Jake's car, a 2006 Holden Astra, was missing from the driveway, and after approaching the front door, the situation became even more troubling. The front door to the property was unlocked. Venturing inside, Rick found that the gas stove in the kitchen had been left running, which was bizarre as nobody was home. After making his way to the dining room, Rick found his son's laptop and mobile phone dismantled on the table. The situation was both concerning and highly perplexing. If Jake had planned to leave, then why didn't he take his phone with him? And why would he leave the stove running? Jake was also considered to be a responsible young man, so why did he leave the door unlocked? And furthermore, what exactly was significant about the laptop? Riddled with worry, Rick called the authorities to report his son as missing, but
yeah, that's freaking weird, y'all. Just the situation that the father walked into, seeing his cell phone and the laptop, like, open or whatever, like, you know what I'm saying, man? And then the door unlocked, but the stove left on. The only thing that I would think at that point is that somebody kidnapped him. But it just seems so random, and the stuff that they left behind, I don't know, y'all. This one seemed, like Coffee Man said, very perplexing.
Despite his and their best efforts, daylight faded with no response from his son, and sadly, the next few days harbored no fresh clues either.
Jake's silence persisted for 6 grueling long days, but as his disappearance reached the 1-week mark, the police finally received a breakthrough. A 12-minute drive away from his home at the Warner Reserve in Springvale, and right here in this car park, his vehicle, which belonged to his father, was found with a couple rather peculiar details. The car remained undamaged out in the open with no signs of foul play. Furthermore, there were no signs to indicate that Jake was in any sort of rush to abandon his vehicle. Upon closer inspection, the authorities realized that the car keys were placed neatly underneath the chassis of the vehicle, indicating that Jake or his assailant were not precious about the car being stolen.
With Jake's car now found, the authorities were able to determine the most likely route he would have taken to get there. With this information, they learned that he had stopped at a gas station along the way. While there, he purchased a drink and some snacks before withdrawing $50 from his bank account. And with the information available, he appeared to be alone and was of normal function. But this would be the last transaction ever to hit his bank account, because after that, it was never touched again. Additionally, all of his social media accounts became entirely silent. The authorities conducted a thorough search of Warner Reserve and the surrounding area where his vehicle was found. But sadly, despite all efforts, nothing new was located. And unfortunately, Jake's case has remained cold ever since. Jake's father has expressed that although his son did suffer from depression, he was receiving counseling at the time of his disappearance. However, he had never expressed any desire to take his own life and had many ambitions for the future. On numerous occasions, Jake had previously expressed a desire to start a new life in the countryside. He wanted to get away from the city and live a more simple lifestyle. But saying that, these thoughts and ambitions did not seem to be serious at the time he expressed them. And so, this leads us to the leading theories of what may have actually happened to Jake. Some believe that his depression may have been far worse than others thought, and he may, as a result, have disappeared after taking his own life. However, there are several problems to this theory. To begin with, if he had taken his life near the Warner Reserve, then his body would have almost certainly been found. Suburbs surround the park, and the closest area of wilderness is a 3-hour walk away. Saying this, we should never exclude all possibilities. There is a chance that maybe Jake managed to make his way far enough into regional Victoria or further afar into the outback. And let's be sober with the situation here. There are a lot of places to disappear in Australia's vast wilderness. The next theory is...
That's true on that first theory, man, that it's a possibility that he could have been way off in the desert or wherever and, you know, took his own life. But if I had to, you know what I'm saying, give my opinion on it, what I believe, I don't think that's the theory that I would go with. I don't know, y'all. This one here, I hate that we ended on an unsolved mystery, but I wouldn't go with that theory of that what happened to Jake. But let's see.
is that Jake simply ran away and didn't want to be found. The reason he dismantled both his laptop and his phone is because they are both traceable objects. He then withdrew $50 in cash, which is enough to get a ride outside of Melbourne. Jake may have disappeared to start a new life elsewhere, using the $50 to get public transport to another location. I mean, he had already expressed a yearning to live in the countryside both to his counsellor and his father. But if that was the case, then why did he leave the front door unlocked and the stove on? Another theory is that Jake was met with foul play while walking around Warren Reserve. However, this theory holds little weight, as Jake's previous actions show some level of intention not to return. Furthermore, there were no witnesses to report foul play. He disappeared in the middle of the day, and there was no evidence to suggest any sort of altercation whatsoever. Another option is that Jake slipped into some sort of psychosis, had no idea who he was, and has since disappeared or even died with no recollection of his former life. Reddit posts are filled with potential theories, but to this day, his case still remains open. I do hope that if you're out there, Jake, that you have found peace, and that you can also bring peace to your family too.
I just hope he's still alive, man. I don't know what happened to him, but at the end of the day, I just hope he's still alive.
After 9 long years, there are still many questions that remain unanswered. But Jake's family are hopeful that one day he will eventually return home. Jake's family have survived through 9 Christmases, 9 birthdays, and 9 years without him. His disappearance remains puzzling to say the least. And so, with that in mind, what do you think happened to Jake? Please let me know in the comments down below.
It's clear to see that Melbourne is a vibrant and beautiful city filled with charm, intrigue, and damn good coffee. Regarded as one of the most cosmopolitan and multicultural cities globally, Melbourne offers a rich tapestry of arts, cuisine, shopping, sports, and leisure. However, that is not to say that it's immune to disappearance and murder, and this video serves as a stark reminder that every city conceals a dark underbelly. My journey across Melbourne allowed me to see parts of this city that I never knew existed. But the real experience for me here was found while retracing the final footsteps of this video's many victims. In the realm of true crime, many of us observe from the safety of our own homes, shielded by screens that distance us from the harsh reality of these true stories. Physically placing myself in these locations, such as Nat's Track, Jill's Memorial, and Jake's last known whereabouts, was a profound experience. It's an unusual feeling when you geographically attach yourself to a case, and I feel the heavy absence of Jill, Natalie, Elizabeth, Deborah, and Jake, and I hope that their loved ones are doing okay. It's an important reminder that, no matter where you are in the world, none of us are safe from harm. We must all actively look out for each other and ourselves, and remember those who, tragically, were not so lucky. And with so many of these victims in our case today being young women, I do have to suggest that we should all be looking out for our lady friends more often.
True.
And with that said, I think I'll end today's video here, folks. Thank you so much for joining me in and around Melbourne. I hope you found this one interesting. Now, obvious to say, this video was slightly different to the usual, so with that in mind, please let me know what you think in the comments down below. I would love to make this a new series, scoping out the dark side of our cities. And although I'm currently scoping out the likes of New York, Toronto, and Tokyo, I have to ask, where would you like to see me go next? Thank you once again for joining me today, and as always, I'll see you very soon for another one. However, until that moment arrives, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.
Just gotta clap it up, y'all. Just gotta clap it up, man. That was a great video by the Coffee Man, y'all. Like, I feel like we just went on a journey with him because of his new format and stuff, man. I'm loving his new format, and I don't know if he gonna keep it this way or this is gonna be a once in a every different time a thing. You know what I'm saying? Every now and again, again thing. You know what I'm saying, man? But it's just freaking cool to watch it, man. It almost got like a movie type aspect to it. It looked kind of like like a movie almost more than a video that I was just watching, y'all. But shout out to the Coffee Man for that. But as far as these 3 cases go, man, as far as Jake, man, all I can say is, y'all, I just hope he's still alive, man. At the end of the day, you can come up with 1,000 different theories of what really happened to him. Seriously, man, like that's sad too, because that just lets you know how little we all know what really happened to him. Like how much little evidence we have of what really happened to him, man. So I just hope he's alive, because we have heard stories of people disappearing as a child, and as an adult they realize years and years and years later that they all of a sudden get their mind back, or something crazy happen where they get reunited with their old family who they actually belong to. And I'm not saying that's how Jake's story is or nothing, but I'm just saying it's a possibility that he can be alive, my brothers and sisters. As far as the second story, man, that dude right there, man, just the fact that he was going around showing the police like, this is why I did it, and this is how I did it, and this is how I did it, and it's like, dude, man, he ain't have no remorse at all, and he had did it to so many women, y'all. I'm just glad that he freaking got locked up, but at the same time, I just ain't like, y'all know I don't like that possibility of parole shit, especially not for a mother who did something like that to all those women, multiple women. Come on, man. And the first one, y'all, before I let y'all go, gotta talk about that one. And what was that one, y'all? It was the lady, man, the lady who freaking was leaving the bar, walking home by herself, man, 1 o'clock in the morning, man. My sisters, I know I have said it, man, 100 times on this video, but y'all, man, just be careful and don't put yourself in those situations, man. Please don't do it, y'all. Please do not freaking do it. I hate that for her, because if you just look at that surveillance footage, it seemed like she didn't know this guy, but she was still just being a nice, good, human and trying to help him out because he asking some BS question or whatever. But I'm glad his ass got caught up too and got that life sentence. And oh man, it was just a great video from the Coffee Man, y'all. I'm gonna go and let y'all go now, man. This one right here got me goddamn, like, I'm complete for the night now. I'm ready to go to sleep, man. I'm ready to go eat and go to sleep. This is just how great this video was, man. I can go to sleep off this one. But I digress. Hope y'all hit that like button. Hope y'all comment, subscribe, and do all that. And come on back tomorrow, because we are going to AJ from the Wi-Fi's. But until then, my friends, remember this: love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.